I gotta know more. Let's do the Lord of the Elden Ring bosses of the Golden Order.
Many of Elden Ring's bosses serve Marika's Golden Order in some shape or form, whether they're loyal to it
Most,
or
I would say.
enslaved by it.
Yeah.
So let's discuss all of these bosses, starting at a time before Order had even come to the lands between.
Prior to the Golden Order.
Mountaintops of the Giants, a name that makes it abundantly clear just
why did he do the fire giants with the S like that? Clearly there's a bunch of fire giants. You see them literally everywhere. They're like in I believe in Caelid, you can see like corpses of fire giants everywhere. You can see them here as you head up into the mountaintops. I know there is one fire giant that you actually fight, but in my mind, that's just like the last of the fire giants or something like that, protecting the big fire pot, whatever. What's it called? The giant forge. So I don't know. I don't know why there's an S there.
Mountaintops of the Giants, a name that makes it abundantly clear just who dominated this region of the world. However, it was not always this way. According to the Borealis' mist incantation, the ice dragons were once lords of the mountaintops long ago, until they were defeated by the fire giants and chased from the peak. And perched upon this peak stands an enormous forge. Interestingly, the chain rings of this forge depict dragons, which might be a reference to the dragons that once dwelt here. And while I don't think we can say for sure who built this forge, the art of smithing is said to have originated among the giants, and the craft was even once considered divine. So it seems likely that at the very least they made good use of this fire. Sparks from this forge would fall down and fertilize the smoldering flowers that bloomed upon the mountaintops, and it seems like it was a pretty crucial part of life in this region. The most ancient giants here were called fire giants, and according to the Burn O' Flame incantation, they have long held a solitary curse to serve as keepers of the flame for eternity. Now, traditionally in From Software games, curses are the domain of the gods, and indeed, the fire giants are cited to have borrowed power from one such god, who is represented here by a single large red eye. This god is called a god of the flame, and it's believed to be able to inhabit fire itself, as well as the bodies of the fire giants.
Fell god. So how many gods do we know about right off the bat? So there's the Golden Order, Marika, all her kin. We got the old ancient dragons we know about that were around long before the Golden Order. And now we know about the giants who have some god there. Oh man, I know there's more. I probably shouldn't have started going down this list because I don't actually remember any others. But I guess that's the point though, right? There's a lot of gods that exist. Oh, the old tree, the crucible, and their gods and stuff. So there's a lot of religions
who worshipped it. The giants shared borders with the astrologers, who, according to their legendary Sword of Night and Flame, established themselves in the mountaintops and considered the fire giants their neighbors. The relationship here is implied to be friendly, even collaborative, maybe, as the sword does combine the power of both flame and the power of the primeval current that's glimpsed within the night sky. The sword would go on to become a treasure of the Carrion royal family, and the Carrions themselves are likely descendants of the astrologers. Generations later, these Carrion royals would call upon their old giant allies for aid, but we'll get to that in a moment. The fire giants also had another neighbor, with whom relations were not so amicable. Further down the mountains, just past the Forbidden Lands, roamed the Knights of Zamor.
Oh yeah, I remember these dudes. I kind of remember they're just like a random little village as you're heading your way towards the mountaintops. And these guys were slaying me. Like, I'm like doing really well. And then, there's like parts of the game where all of a sudden you're just like, it's like skill check. or level check. Like this was one of them. I mean, I guess I could have just ran through, but that's not how I play the game. I like to like kill everybody and explore every little area. These guys messed me up.
Past the Forbidden Lands roamed the Knights of Zamor. According to their armor, these long-lived warriors, clad in biting, freezing winds, are said to have been the mortal enemies of the fire giants since time immemorial. According to their weaponry, these beings were devoted to winter itself and had weapons styled after icy winds and bodies that were cloaked in swirling
So they
ice
didn't
storms.
like the
It makes good
heat,
sense
the fire.
that such cold beings would be natural mortal enemies of the fire giants,
Yeah.
and they commonly did challenge their larger rivals.
I wonder why the fire giants
But it
live
seems like
in
their
such a
true
cold
chance
place.
came when Queen Marika waged war against the fire giants, and the Knights of Zamor gladly joined her offensive. They earned great renown amongst the Order of the Erd Tree, and many ancient heroes of Zamor became hailed as heroes, as the fire giants were largely wiped from the face of the earth after this war.
So she used
Now-
the Knights of Zamor to wage war on the fire giants.
Up until now, I've resisted calling the giants
And this is about to answer my question about why there's a parenthesis S fire giants at the beginning. I assume the fire giant.
this war. Now, up until now, I've resisted calling the giants evil, but the reality is that in pretty much every item description, their god is described as a fell god, and the giant's flame is a flame of ruin. And to be fair, their god doesn't seem like a super nice guy. I mean, it only really opens its eye when the fire giant boss sacrifices a leg, which is pretty metal. But I'm sort of giving them the benefit of the doubt because I think it's
Yeah.
pretty clear who's writing the history about this fell god here. The many mentions of this god as evil clearly come about because fire itself was just this extremely taboo topic during Marika's Age of the Erd Tree. And it's not just Giant's Flame items that mention this. Marika's
The flame of ruin is anathema to the Erd Tree, but prophets sometimes glimpse it within the faith all the same. Sadly, when this occurs, their sole reward is banishment. So when you embrace fire, you are banished.
Age of the Erd Tree. And it's not just Giant's Flame.
And then this one, thought to represent a surreptitious prophecy of cardinal sin, the lit candle tree design was forbidden. Huh. Fire being forbidden.
Items that mention this. Fire in general was prohibited to those who served the Erd Tree,
Though fire was prohibited to the... Oh, that's what he's
which
reading.
was a pretty smart defensive measure, especially considering that many rival outer gods also have a flame of their own. The Formless Mother has Blood Flame, the Three Fingers have Frenzied Flame, the outer god of Death has Ghost Flame, but Giant's Flame in particular was capable of burning the Erd Tree, and that is a fact that clearly inspired the inevitable war with the Giants.
Yeah, big risk.
The Giants were deemed mortal enemies of the Erd Tree, and they allegedly desolated nature, triggered avalanches, and whipped up storms of flame with their roars. Clearly those who served the Erd Tree were afraid, and perhaps rightfully so. And so, led by Lord Godfrey, the forces of the Erd Tree went to war. The Fire Giants borrowed from the power of the Fell God to fight against the Erd Tree, but were defeated nonetheless. According to the Burn O' Flame incantation, this released the Fire Giants from their curse to serve as keepers of the flame, all except one, who the Fell God still hides within.
Oh, I
And
see.
upon realizing
I see. Okay, cool. Yeah, I always kind of wondered that. So first off, when I played, I didn't really catch that the face and the chest of the fire giant was the god itself. So that's pretty cool. Also didn't really think about it being a separate entity. So when you're messing him up and you chop his leg off and he sacrifices it and all that, and then he comes alive, I didn't really think about it like a god within him was coming alive to now protect when he goes ham on you right there. Raise your hand if you died a lot at the end of trying to fight this dude. So yeah, that's pretty interesting.
that the giant's flame would never die, Marika left this last giant alive, knowing it was bound to protect the flame for all eternity, and thus leaving it cursed.
Okay, smart. That's really smart. So I'm talking a lot on this one, I know, but there's a lot of cool stuff going on. So obviously the biggest risk to the Erd Tree is the one thing that can burn the Erd Tree, right? So what do? We must kill everybody that can harness the power of that flame from the forge, except for the one that is left holding the fell god within, cursed to protect it from anybody now that would try to use it. Like, that guy can't go use it because he's got to stay there and protect it, right? So, genius move, really. America's full of a lot of genius moves. Although, if you watch my other videos, you might know that I don't think she really wanted to do all this stuff. But, it's my hypothesis.
Cursed to protect the flame from someone like us. In addition to the Knights of Zamor, many lesser giants were also roped into the war against the fire giants. These lesser giants are called trolls, and are confirmed to be a race that is descended from the giants. This relationship is clearer at the mountaintops, where the trolls here still cast giant's flame incantations. Troll hammers were even once used as ancient ceremonial smithing tools. Thus, it seems evident that the trolls and the fire giants coexisted for a time, and then fell further and further apart. Because while some trolls are assumedly still fire giants at heart, many now are not. In fact, at the heart of most trolls is nothing. There's this suspicious hollow here, almost as if something has been ripped out of their torso. And when you consider what's upon the torso of the last remaining fire giant, the truth becomes pretty clear, right? Every single troll is now missing that giant eye of their outer god. And if you manage to look really closely here at a troll, we realize that in its place is this strange stone tablet that is held in place by what look like roots. As pointed out by Quelaag, these rooted tablets are very reminiscent of the rooted shackles that were created to bind the Omen twins, Mohg and Morgoth, which might suggest that the trolls are also being shackled or suppressed by Marika in some way.
Whoa.
This is just speculation, of course, but Marika does.
He always does that, says, this is speculation, of course, after giving, like, the most concise, accurate, like, what else could it be? That makes total sense. It's like the exact tablets that are used, and assuming you're watching this, you're into it, right? Like, you found those shackles for various enemies, and, Mohg and Morgoth both had them. I don't think I found the one for Mohg. Actually, I think I did, but I never actually used them because they weren't that useful. Maybe I just wasn't good enough at using them, but I feel like you could use them. It would shackle them down for like 5 seconds of a 2-minute fight, and you could only use them a couple of times, but I digress. I think that's a very good description of what's going on there, and having the detail to put that inside of every troll. Obviously, the face is gone. That kind of flies in the face of the idea that the fell god is just left in the one giant that I had. If there was a face in every single person that had the power of that god, that would be a little bit different. I guess we don't really know, but all cool anyway.
Have this suspicious set of stone tablets in her chambers, and I think it's a good theory.
Who is this?
This is just speculation, of course, but Marika does have this suspicious set of stone tablets in her chambers, and I think it's a good theory.
Another
a sword gravestone in the mountains.
Another thing promoting that theory.
Further on the trolls' role in the War of the Giants. Here, champions battled, and allegedly the trolls betrayed. But what was the nature of this betrayal? Did these lesser giants resent their larger kin? Or did Marika force this betrayal in some way with the stone shackles? I think that's largely up to you guys. But whatever the case, nowadays the trolls are said to have lost their minds and are
very cool
inseparable
idea
from the weight of their rusty swords, which have long since lost any trace of gold. So whether they carry coffins or mine down at the bedrock of the earth, their sad state brings to mind enslavement.
Yeah, I was about to say, that's exactly the word I was about to say. I feel like they've just been The whole story they just told there was an enslavement by America to do their bidding. They lost their fire power, and now they just wander around enslaved, and that's it.
That said, some trolls do seem to have a little bit more dignity, and these are the ones that fought against the Erd Tree later on. These were the enchanted troll knights, deemed comrades of the young Renala, and they were called into service when the queen invoked an oath that they swore long ago. As mentioned earlier, the trolls go way back to when the fire giants and the astrologers were still neighbors, and back then it seems, for whatever reason, they swore an oath to the astrologers. And later, when the Carrions went to war against the Erd Tree, I assume, the trolls were finally called into that service to be treated as true knights.
Everything, it would be so easy when making this game. So someone in the comments of the last video I released, I had made a comment about how there's Japanese and English translations that get referenced. And I had said something about like, oh, well, didn't George R.R. Martin write this? So would, even though it's a Japanese first gate, like the development team's Japanese, wouldn't the English translation be maybe the most accurate? But the answer is no, because old George just wrote like the background, while Miyazaki and his team, presumably, wrote the actual item descriptions, the intricate game lore, and things like that. So, to my point, wouldn't it have been easy for them to just say, okay, there are trolls and they used to be fired? Well, you didn't have to go that far. There are trolls, they fought for America. Done. That's all they had to write. Most games in existence, that's all they would have said, right? But not this game, right? Not all FromSoft. You're going to have so much thought put into this. Okay, we have trolls that live in the lands between. Cool. And then, oh, how about the trolls were fire giants? They're just not as big, but they had them. And they had these faces, but all the faces are ripped out because America put in this stone tablet to enslave them. And then some of them didn't have the tablets or whatever. I haven't really explained that. Clearly, this guy right in front of me is missing his face, but I don't see a tablet, But there's sort of a civil war. They chose different sides depending on who they were, and deeper and deeper and deeper. And how do we know all of this? A few item descriptions, some characters designed. This guy obviously being a Carrion warrior here with his sword and armor, and then the ones up north holding old golden swords, sort of abandoned looking, while this guy does not. We get all this information based on almost nothing, but it all lines up.
Carrier, wielding swords embedded with blue glintstone and summoning enormous glint blades, they fought arm in arm with their long-lost human comrades. Iji is another such example of that relationship, by the way. He became the Carrion family's royal blacksmith, and unlike the Stone Digger trolls, he actually uses that weapon for its intended purpose, as a blacksmith's hammer, and now he serves the Lady Rani, who he's known ever since her childhood. Next, I want to talk about the Knights' Cavalry. These recurring bosses wander the dim roads at night, and were once led by the Fell Omen. Now, this description specifically references Margit's title as the Fell Omen, not Morgoth's title as the Omen King, and I think this is important because Margit represents this undercover extension of Morgoth.
There's a fantastic chance that I have confused the names Morgoth and Margit throughout the game. I know they look exactly the same, and just, if I messed it up, just let me be. I'm trying.
Who scouts further out in the world and takes out champions who approach all the way from Stormvale Castle. Morgoth's big role in the story is that he's a stout defender of the Erd Tree who wouldn't dare betray the Golden Order. He calls all the other demigods willful traitors all, simply for fighting over the great runes of the Elden Ring. Even Radahn, who has a lot of signs of being quite loyal to the Golden Order, is called a traitor, simply because he fights at one stage another character who has a great rune. You can even see Morgoth in in one of these opening cutscene cinematics, leaping onto what looks like Radahn, and managing to even get an attack off on one of the mightiest of the demigods. Actually, a channel named Smotown has a really good little video discussing whether this is indeed Radahn, and I'd highly recommend you go and check that out. Anyway, my point
I think I will check that out. That's not the first time I've heard it's not the first time Smotown's been recommended to me.
is the Knights Cavalry seem to fulfill a similar role to Margit. According to their armor, they were deliverers of death for great warriors, knights, and champions. Simple as that. No motive is listed, except that they have a reputation for taking out the greatest warriors of the world. And that makes sense that that would be their aim, because only the strongest can acquire 2 great runes and approach the Erd Tree, so it's almost as if strength itself must be stifled so that Morgoth's failing order might be maintained. As for why Margit defends Stormvale, I like to think that he's fighting here because he recognizes that Godric is the weakest of the demigods, who yet remains, so he's bolstering his strength in that sense and trying to maintain this unsteady stalemate.
Okay.
Having a strong defense is essentially the guiding principle of those who serve the Erd Tree, especially as you get closer to the capital. There are numerous examples of this. The soldiers of Leyndell fight their battles defensively. The knights of Leyndell always put their shield before the sword, and Leyndell itself, the city, is built to withstand siege, with layers and layers of defensive measures built in. And the protective standard to which all defenders of the Erd Tree aspire is that of the Tree Sentinels, whose order became the living rampart of the Erd Tree.
Just so you know, I'm in Tree Sentinel level, well, not level 1, whatever you come out at the beginning. I'm in fight the Tree Sentinel for 5 hours till you kill it, even though you're not ready, gang. Let's go. Where you at?
Embellished with golden tree-crested armor and shields that can retaliate with bolts of light. They turn defense into offense. And that's the idea in Leyndell. Defense is the best offense. And the way this idea is presented is just such beautiful storytelling. So many characters in other areas of the Lands Between long to return to the blessed land of the Erd Tree, and even for you it's this goal that looms over you the entire game. So the path is designed to repel everyone getting close. You know, the highway through Leonia has fallen apart, so you need to take this secret, waterlogged route up through the mountain. This was my favorite part of the game, by the way, finding this secret path through the mountains and infiltrating the Altus Plateau. And then when you finally get there, there are countless ballista and golem archers, and they're all positioned facing outwards. And finally, you even find a side entrance to Leyndell, and that is even guarded by a tree sentinel. And it's not just any tree sentinel. This one is actually a draconic tree sentinel, which is kind of different. This variant of sentinels arose after the ancient dragons attacked Leyndell in its history, and we talk more about this event in the video about the demigods. But in the end, the ancient dragons were befriended, and worship of the ancient dragons was deemed acceptable, alongside belief in the Erd Tree. Dragons were conjoined with the Golden Order, so to speak, and the dragon cultists took after them in a physical fashion. Also instrumental to the rise of the Erd Tree were the Crucible Knights. They were eventually...
He's reviewing a lot of stuff. He did mention that he had mentioned that in a previous video, and that's accurate. A lot of this is now sort of a retelling of what I've already heard. Not a lot of this, but the dragon part, the Crucible Knights, I assume will be as well.
Scorned for their strength.
Which is okay, because I could always use a review.
Erd Tree were the Crucible Knights. They were eventually scorned for their strength, for their appearance, and for their close resemblance to Chaos, and how that inspired who they originally were. 16 of these knights served Godfrey, the first Elden Lord, and all 16 of them yet remain across the Lands Between.
Pretty hard. None of them have died.
Everjail. 2 appear to be dead and are summoned to fight you as spirits. A number of Crucible Knights still patrol Leyndell. Some protect great tree roots, though most just stand dejected in lost corners of the earth, and one of them has even found a new blasphemous master. So the next time you fight these,
pretty hard that she was able to get a Crucible Knight to be her like bodyguard. Like actually, when he's just standing there, when you get up to the there, here, God, I wish my brain worked better. I can never remember the names of places. Volcano Manor. I had to go look it up. I can never remember anything. Point is, how tough is she to actually get one of the Crucible Knights to be her bodyguard at Volcano Manor? Like, and when you show up, you don't really realize what's going on. You just see a guy standing there, and you hope he doesn't whoop your ass. But knowing now, like that's a pretty that's a power move. Having this guy just standing there, like you should be scared of her more. What did she do to get him on her side?
New blasphemous master. So, the next time you fight these, think carefully about where they are and who they're fighting with, because each knight is a distinct character with purpose or lack thereof, even though they were all once united by a common purpose and a single lord. Many of these knights fight with different aspects of the crucible. Some fight with wings, some with horns, fire, and tail, but what they all have in common is their mastery of their Lord Godfrey's signature stomp attack, which breaks up the earth beneath their feet. This is such a cool homage to Godfrey. You know, knowing the lore is great. It definitely makes dying to it feel a little bit better, right? Anyway, I think it's important to remember that Godfrey and his Crucible Knights existed in an age before the Erd Trees, an age with the Great Tree in its primordial form, back when there was this red-tinted crucible of life, and these were warriors who drew power from its chaos. Eventually, however, they were brought on board with order, which is best exemplified by Godfrey being tamed by the Beast Regent upon his back. There are two types of ornamentation that the Crucible Knights can have. There's axe ornamentation, which is worn by Crucible Knight Ordovus and his men, and I think the axe is a bit of a homage to Godfrey again. And then there are some knights that have great tree ornamentation, and these are displayed by the knight Siluria and her men, which is of course a reference to the Great Tree itself. And I'd like to quickly talk about the Great Tree. In one of my first lore videos, I proposed that there was a great tree that must have existed before the Erd Tree, and that the Erd Tree might have even replaced this great tree. This was based on the English root resin item description, which has the word Great Tree capitalized and as one word, which certainly makes you think that it's a distinct tree, right? The line is, the roots of the Great Tree once linked to those of the Erd Tree, which is a line that seems to clearly set up that these are two separate trees. Except the Japanese translation doesn't say that. The Japanese translation says, these roots are said to have once been connected to the Golden Tree. It does mention the Great Tree earlier, but it seems to just be referencing the Erd Tree as that Great Tree, because it is a really big tree. Some people have taken this to mean that there was no Great Tree before the Erd Tree, and you know, while that's certainly possible, I do think it's still fair to argue that a Great Tree existed before the Erd Tree. For one, many of the Crucible Knight items
Okay, I hear him. I think the translation is pretty telling. I think he's right to bring that back up here. It could be possible that the Erd Tree is growing and little pieces of it get separated or whatever, and they're just looking like a tree and not the golden glowing Erd Tree at this point. So I think either way, I don't really know how big of a deal this topic is.
Reference a primordial form of the Erd Tree, and they have ornamentation and history that is based on this primordial holiness that is not the holiness of the Erd Tree. So calling it a great tree might just be referencing that tree. And secondly, Siluria defends a giant tree in the deep root depths.
Yeah, right there.
It's one that has this hollowed out entrance that is reminiscent of the entrance at the Erd Tree as well. So maybe there's something here. I just kind of wanted to set that straight for now. But the reality is that we don't really know for sure. And hopefully DLC will shed a light on some of these past ages of the world, which seems to be a common trend with From Software DLC. And there just really are so many remnants of previous ages in this game, and I'd love to see a little bit more about what their cultures really were like. It kind of makes you resent just how all-encompassing the Erd Tree became. So many of these cultures have been lost, and I guess that's how a lot of
Yeah.
characters in game feel as well. They feel upset by that, and knowing this fact helps you understand why so many of these characters are okay with burning down the Erd Tree. They're totally fine with that. And this brings us to our next boss.
No, that totally makes a lot of sense. And why would it be any different? You know, you have there's all these different places, everybody's happy, different cultures. Big golden asshole comes in, everything gets destroyed. The Erd Tree's now literally the Golden Order. It's ridiculous. So, yeah, they had it coming.
Because in the act of burning down the Erd Tree, you release a slew of ulcerated tree spirits from it. These spirits lie suffering beneath the ash until you come along. But of course you fight many of these tree spirits across the lands between, even before the end game. There's an ulcerated tree spirit at the husk of this minor Erd Tree, there's a bunch in catacomb dungeons by great tree roots, there's even one at the husk of the Halig Tree. There's a lot of these. Some might even say there's too many of these bosses.
Yeah,
I
they're
think
pretty
they're the
tough.
worst boss in Elden Ring. But anyway,
What was that one down in the Lake of Rot? It's like way down, like you go down across and you cross the whole lake, and then you go down again into this like kind of tiny area where there's all those little guys with like 50 legs, little centipede arrow shooting jerks. That's the worst one.
understanding their lore might make it a bit more palatable. So, while these creatures fight near the trees, I don't think they're defending them. Rather, I kind of think they're this corrupted byproduct of dead or dying trees. We know that one of the new
I agree with
purposes
that.
of the
Based
Erd
on the
Tree
name,
is to
ulcerated
accept spirits
tree spirit.
and allow them to live on. And it's almost like these ulcerated spirits are this horrific failure of that process. One of Miyazaki's favorite themes in these games is the idea that life is not supposed to be eternal, and I think these spirits are a physical manifestation of stagnation and decay. They're this product of an age of an Erd Tree that really should have ended a long time ago. Most tree spirits drop golden seeds, which are also found at the base of smaller illusory trees, and they read, "When the Elden Ring was shattered, these seeds flew from the Erd Tree, scattering across the various lands, as if life itself knew that its end had come." A talisman also goes on to say, "The Erd Tree was once perfect and eternal, and thus it was believed that Erd Tree seeds could not exist. This was back when there was an age of plenty, when blessings literally dripped from the boughs of the Erd Tree like sap. And the Erd Tree's warm light healed those who bathed in its rays. The Erd Tree flourished with abundance, yet it was only for a fleeting moment. Such is the course of all life." Then the leaves began to fall, and as you know from the introduction and the endings, the fallen leaves tell a story. The story is that the Erd Tree was withering. Scattered across the lands between are minor Erd Trees, where you go to collect crystal tears. Basins were placed at the feet of minor Erd Trees in order
I wonder, I thought about this when playing the game with the minor Erd Trees. Clearly there's the Erd Tree. So clearly there's the Erd Tree, and then the minor Erd Trees are around. I didn't put much thought into that generally, but a fleeting thought that like, okay, are there more Erd Trees growing? So every minor Erd Tree, is it grown, or would it turn into a full-blown Erd Tree? And then are we just at like the beginning of this 1,000-year process to grow Erd Trees over the entire planet?
to collect these tears, though in some cases these tears are dropped by Erd Tree avatars instead. When the Elden Ring was shattered, the avatars emerged, wielding ceremonial staffs that depict the Erd Tree in its historic radiance. These creatures are the will of the dying Erd Tree, made manifest, I think. They are
I really like these, how the tree is on top and it's little, but then it shows how it is this massive root system, showing maybe it's like stronger at its base and the core. It's a very cool design.
These creatures are the will of the dying Erd Tree, made manifest, I think. They are literally part tree. after all, and they fight desperately to protect the minor Erd trees, which are the offspring of the withering Erd tree itself. Some avatars, placed in Caelid and Miquella's Halig tree, are rotten avatars, and they even have this uniquely designed staff that festers with rot, just as they do. Remember that Halig tree is also an emulation of the Erd tree, so it makes sense that it has its own avatars as well. And they fight on, because to many of these creatures, any Erd tree, whether it's minor or a copy or doomed, is something worth protecting.
All right, well, that's going to end that one. I think there's a few more in this series, so I'm just going to knock all those out soon. So I hope you join back with me to see those as well. Thanks. Bye.